Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Greg Breault, owner of RocketSlug Games and publisher of the successfully funded Dwarves of Iron Peak. In his career in illustration in the video gaming industry, Greg acquired skills needed to create a fun game full of minis and beautiful fantasy artwork. Greg, welcome to the Binge. How you doing?
Oh, thanks, James. I'm doing good. How are you?
I am doing great. Let me just start by saying that your company name is probably one of my favorite company names I've come across, RocketSlug Games. When I see the picture of this slug with a rocket strapped to his back, it just brings me ultimate joy. Absolutely love it. How'd you come up with the name?
To be honest, I have this buddy, Joel, and we were just goofing around with company names, and he said, "What about RocketSlug?" And we kicked it around, and I just thought of the imagery in my head, and I thought that would be pretty cool to have it. And I said, "How about if he's strapped onto this rocket and he can't do anything, and he's literally going along with this rocket?" So that kind of feels like my whole experience with everything. So
maybe it's my twisted sense of humor, but I got a good laugh out of it when you sent me your logo. I'm like, oh, that is just awesome. Yes. Absolutely love it. So let's start off. Actually, I want to just congratulate you. You had a great campaign. It's a couple years old now, but it's worth mentioning that you hit, I think it was about 21,000. I'm going to say this in Canadian dollars because it's always bigger. $21,000 on a $12,000 goal. So
Yep.
I think that was 175% of your goal, which is just fantastic. 375 backers. Wow. That must have been pretty exciting when you achieved that.
It was honestly, I had done a previous Kickstarter and that didn't work out too well. So I learned from that and I adjusted things. The $12,000, believe it or not, if you see the game with the minis, would not have met production. I would have been kicking a lot of money for that, at even more than I did now. So that just barely covered production and some of the shipping from China. So
that was quite a risk you took, I guess, then, eh? If you know that your target's not going to cover off your costs, you're either A, know that you've got some cash aside that you can inject, or B, you're hoping and praying that you're going to way overshoot that target. That's quite the risk.
Yeah. I did. I had some cash saved up and I was prepared to spend it on it, but I even have my taped up microphone headset, so didn't have much to spend. But yeah, it just got production. A lot of the backers, I'm sure a lot of Kickstarters feel like this, a lot of the backers don't know really what happened in the background, and they don't know the money that was kicked in. But I got it out, and all the shipping I paid for myself for United States and international. So
yeah, it's interesting actually. If you read Jamie Stagmeyer's book, and I know I've gone on about this several times on different episodes of the podcast, but I am a big fan of the book. Check out his website as well. Lots of great advice on there as well. But one of the things he covers off in the book is he says, people sometimes make the mistake if they set this huge goal, and really the ideal target should be, okay, if I've got a pile of cash that I can, how much can I inject in? Okay. So the total cost of what you think that thing is going to cost, less what you can inject in, is what your target should be. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes you see these campaigns where people I don't want to use the word greedy, because I don't think it's greed. I think it's misunderstanding of really how big of a mountain that is to climb in some cases, especially if you don't have all the things kind of firing on all cylinders. And the lower that target, the better chance you're going to have of hitting it early, which then is going to drive algorithms, which is going to help keep ththings going and so forth. So let's get I want to take a little of a rewind back and get into kind of your background. So you were in the video game industry. And so what did you do in the video game industry? Were you like an illustrator or something, or?
No, I did 3D graphics. So environments, characters, textures, just modeling, weapons, armor, anything, just for Dark Age of Camelot, Middle-earth Online, and worked for EA Sports. So cool. Tiger, I unfortunately worked on Superman, if you remember the earlier Superman Returns, which just that basically just tanked and lots of money, but it was a good experience. Tiger Woods, NASCAR. So I did a lot of the graphics that you see in games. So
Oh, it's cool.
that's kind of where I started. But I started out in illustration. My brother Mike had worked for TSR back with Gary Gygax, and I always went to Gen Con. So he always brought me back there to see like the artists. So I have a picture with, Larry Elmore from TSR. You'd know his paintings,
Yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
went and visited with Larry Elmore and Keith Parkinson, and just went into a room with just tons of easel paintings and these guys sitting around. And I didn't know they were the amazing guys that they are. And that really inspired me to go forward with illustration. And then my brother said, "Hey, you can use computers, right? To do this stuff." So yeah, so I have to credit my brother Doug for getting me into computers.
That's awesome. And then parallel to that is, how long have you been in kind of board game industry and playing? Have you been playing board games your whole life? Is it something you got into later in life, or?
So when I was 13, my brother Mike, who worked at TSR, brought me home just a stack of goblins, and he's like, "Oh, let me show you what I work on," because he was an editor and writer, and he did Book of Layers. And we set up this I had a train set with like a cavern. He set up these little goblins, and he taught me how to fight. And from then on, I'm like, "Oh, send me modules," and he sent me tons of stuff. So that kind of started out my love of D&D. But that's when I was younger, and I got into video games. And board games, as you know, were not so popular. They fell by the wayside.
Yeah.
So I started a lot of video games, and then got into video game industry. And not until maybe 7 years ago did I think, I should work on a board game, because the video game thing, you need programmers, artists, and everybody to stick together to make a successful game. And I tried that a lot. with a lot of projects, and especially getting programmers to stick.
Yeah.
So I decided I can do the art. I can try to do the sculpting. I actually started learning how to sculpt with the 3D, with not in 3D, in traditional clay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, that was rough. I'm like, is this how they do it with the pins, making chainmail, putting the pin in? And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, so I did that. And then my other buddy said, hey, you can do that in 3D and then just print them out. And back then, printers were not really home use. So I went to Shapeways and ordered prototypes and did all the 3D art. So so then I got into doing my own board game, and it's worked out.
So is it the game that you end up, Dwarves of Iron Peak, was that the first game, or did you, when you took a Kickstarter before, was that this game, you tried it once and then you came back again, or was it a different game altogether?
That was this game. It was basically 8 dwarves, and you fought this troll. Yeah. And it's got a unique mechanism in it where the dwarven lancers have a toothpick, and they stick the toothpick in a troll's foot to pin it down and actually play the troll. And then they can run around and do whatever they want or try to kill him. So that's how it was. But with the first Kickstarter, like you were saying, I asked way too much. I actually asked what the production costs, which was $23,000. And so in that, it was, as you know, the Kickstarters ramp up, and then they hit a ledge, and they just kind of kite along that edge, and then they skirt up at the end. And I just was trying to calculate it out, and I decided canceling it was better than having it fail.
Right.
So I could retool it. So I retooled it and added more quests and more miniatures, and changed the name. It was called Hoarders, and everybody said, "Is that like the TV show? Do I just hoard a bunch of stuff and have dead cats under things?" So it was confusing. So I had to just retool everything.
Well, Dwarves of Iron Peak is definitely a cooler name. So definitely. Talk to me about how, now it's described as a 2 to 4 player game. The playthroughs I've seen is like 2-player, where it's, the troll versus the dwarves. How does this game vary for the different players? Like, so if you want to do, say, 3 players or 4 players, like, how does that work out?
So it's a short skirmish game. There's 8 dwarves, but since the Kickstarter and previously I had added, sorry, my screen just switched. So I added, there's the goblin, there's 3 spiders, there's the troll, So you can basically split them up, and now they have the colored bases as well. So you can split up the dwarves into sets of 4. Someone can play the 2 sets of dwarves, the spiders and the goblin and the troll, and you can split them up into a 3 or 4 player game. So
I got you.
You just have to be more careful. Something like if you're playing the spiders, you just have to know that they're one-shot kills, and just play a little bit more cautiously and help each other. Like the troll would have to defend you a little bit. And,
so how do you play the game? So it's I guess it's not really D&D. This is more of like tactical skirmish. Can you explain to our listeners the difference between kind of traditional D&D and skirmish type games? Because as soon as people see trolls and dwarves and things like that, you automatically assume it's D&D, right? So
it's just played with a 6-sided die. You can see them right there. The green and blue. Blue is for the dwarves, and troll has green. It's just basically to hit. So the dwarves will have a 3 or above or 4 above to hit. The troll will have a 4 above to hit. Spiders above a 3. So they're very similar to hit mechanics in there. So if you basically hit, and things just really do 1 point of damage in there. The troll, it gets a little bit more tricky because he's got a whole player sheet where you're hitting different parts of his body. The cool thing is it has 6 quests, and the first 3 quests are this creature called Murkmaw, and he's got some lore behind him, which I can tell you about later. But he's got some lore behind him. The first 3 quests are Murkmaw, and then the last 3 quests are the troll. And you're getting things like the sigil, and then at the end you have to destroy the troll. In the first 3 quests, you have to destroy Murkmaw, and he's actually got tentacles and a big head and stuff like that.
Now, isn't there one where you have to collect treasure, like get the troll's treasure, get in and get out, or something like that? Or
that's quest 5. So you have to get in there. There's 3 piles of treasure. And this is actually how the game started out. Me and one of my buddies were like, oh, it's a big troll, and what do you have to do? So he basically hides this dwarven sigil under one of the piles of treasure, and it's a little bit of a bluffing game where if he moves towards this pile, you think, that's where it is because he's defending there.
Right.
But sometimes he's just tricking you, and he's gonna come in and destroy you with this hammer. He's got a big hammer that he can strike out with 2 spaces. There's also cards that are kind of short little game breaker cards. Like you can break a lance if it's in the troll's foot. So if the dwarves gather around him, like they are there, he can hold that card, and then they think they've pierced his foot, so that foot can't move. They think, yay! And then he plays that card and just destroys all of the dwarves that are around his foot. So there's some cool little things like that. All the games that I've played, the game turns on you. You think you're going to win, and it turns back. So it's pretty unique as far as it turning back and forth as to who's going to win.
And it's a quick game too. You're talking what, 20, 30 minutes, right? From what I've seen.
Yep. 20, 30 minutes. Yep.
Now I'll describe for the listeners. So if you go to RocketSlug Games, .com and check this out, you'll see the game, you'll see kind of how the board is set up, and kind of this troll's lair. What I think is really cool is these feet, right? So these 2 feet that are moving around the board, these giant feet are representing the troll, I guess, as he's walking. I guess he's so big that for the dwarves, all they can see is his feet. They can't see the rest of his body. But he's got a huge hammer that can come down and I guess club the dwarves, and you can step on dwarves and things like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, when these
it's very satisfying to step on the dwarves. It's very, very satisfying.
And I'm sure it's satisfying to pierce the troll's foot if you're a dwarf too. Right?
But there is a cool thing. If a lancer, a dwarven lancer, the guys who hold the lancers, if you do step on them, they brace themselves. They die, but they also do some massive damage under his foot. So it's not too satisfying. It's satisfying when you're crushing them, but you do take some damage if those guys are armed.
Oh, nice. And of course you can see that. So it's a strategic move you're making, right? It's like, okay, I'm going to take that guy out, although I'm going to take some damage.
Yeah.
Now when you move those feet around the board, the one thing I was trying to figure out is, Do they have to stay like a maximum distance? Like they can't go a certain distance apart from each
Right.
other because they're representing them
Yeah.
walking, right?
It's one hex. So basically, if this is the heel,
Right.
you can't have more than two hexes away
Okay.
from the other foot. And he can't do. He's a big troll, so he can't do any
Moves and things like
ballerina
that.
moves. So between those, he's not a ballerina, and the two hex thing, you begin to understand how he can move. It is a little tricky moving the troll at first, but definitely satisfying crushing those guys.
And when his foot is pierced, is the front of the foot kind of stationary then until that gets healed, and then just
Yeah,
the
the
just the
the
heel?
whole foot. Yeah, the whole foot stays still. But
Mm,
the cool thing is you can still move the other foot
yeah.
around to get dwarves.
Yeah.
Um, there's two warriors, and they have special abilities where if they can get in his blind spot and do more damage from behind him. And they're kind of defenders. They also have like Space Hulk. If you ever played old timey Space Hulk,
Okay. Yeah.
Attack of Opportunity, they can put this defense stance. So if a spider or the troll's foot steps in around them, they get a free attack. So they're the defenders of the Lancers, the great Lancers that the dwarves.
Oh, that's cool.
They're
And
all
the
dwarves.
yeah, and
Some of them hold spears.
and the lances come out too, right? So you can remove the lances and put them
Right.
in and stick them in the foot and so forth. And then the color bases, you said that's what I guess to differentiate team players. Is that what
Yep,
those are for?
there's four blue and four red, and so those you can that's more for the 3 and 4 player aspect of it. But yeah,
And how'd you come up with the idea for this game? Like mechanically, this kind of skirmish versus like kind of a classic D&D game where it could be a campaign going for a while. These quick little battles. Like, where'd you come up with the idea?
I
Just
I cut up a bunch of foam core when I decided, hey, I'm not going to do the video game thing anymore. I'm gonna go the board game route.
yeah,
I thought, oh, I can do a little bit of design. And granted, I'm not the best designer, but I thought, okay, there's dwarves, and what are they going to fight? What are they going to do? So I literally cut up foam core, and I was sticking the toothpicks, or actually, I wasn't using toothpicks. I thought eventually I stuck toothpicks in. I'm like, wouldn't this be cool? Because we're eating pizza and something at that time. I'm like, wouldn't it be cool if I could get these? And my buddy said, well, how are you going to get them to stick in their hands? I'm like, so that was a lot of crafting with
yeah, I
with
guess.
traditional sculpting and then eventually 3D to get the toothpicks to stay in their hands. So when I actually sent those away to manufacturing, the manufacturers said, "Oh, we can't make toothpicks." I'm like, "No, no, you just need to put 8 toothpicks in that they hold them." And it took me about 2 weeks to explain that these toothpicks go in and out of their hands and they just fit in there. Even I showed even video of me saying, look, they go
Yeah.
in there. But eventually it was so I think that part of it is a fairly unique thing about the game. So
Wow. And then the artwork. So did you do all the artwork? I mean, these miniatures are pretty impressive. Like they're very, very detailed. For people that collect minis, I'm sure would absolutely love these to be able to paint them. Who did your artwork for you?
I did all the artwork.
Oh, wow.
Like I said, I did have an illustration background, and the sculpting I basically had to learn. But I've always messed around with 3D, and I got into ZBrush, and again I had started doing them traditionally, and then in ZBrush and doing 3D. So I did all the art. That's why it took me a very long time, and even after the Kickstarter,
Yeah.
there were of course edits to everything. So
Yeah.
I did that, and I had a few people work on the rule book with me and editing. Richard Borg, he lives right down the street from me, so I brought my rule book to him, and he just slashed it apart and did like 2 days worth of editing and gave it back to me. And I had to rearrange everything in a program I didn't know for layout. So yeah, that's I did the artwork. I have many hats during that campaign. A lot of the backers just don't don't understand. They think I'm a big company like
Yeah.
Cool Mini or not, and I can give all of this stuff. Like I had free shipping on U.S. Shipments, and I gave a lot of the international backers some discounts and stuff like that, and that really hurt. Where a bigger company, it wouldn't affect so much,
So did your campaign break even at least, or was it
Oh
like a
no,
sunk cost, or no?
oh no. So it was about 22,000 altogether.
Yeah.
So far I have chipped in around another $9,000
Wow.
as far as shipping. Yeah, the shipping is, especially the international, and nowadays is
Oh,
pretty
it's,
bad.
yeah, way higher. And
Yeah,
so what a lot of people will do is sometimes, and I mean, I've even done this on campaigns, you take a loss when the campaign's first launched, but you have extra inventory that's made that then you can slowly sell over time and recoup and hopefully get back to that, at least break even. Did you have extra units made, or how did that work?
I do. They're all sitting in this black room back here that my kids are supposed to be sleeping in, but
Your home warehouse.
yeah. So I was going to rent a storage unit, and I'm like, I can just use this room, and we all kind of share a room upstairs, and it's a labor of love. I wanted to do it, so they have sitting behind me there in a bunch of boxes, and I'm trying to get rid of them as I go.
So you're slowly selling these off your website, I guess, is
Right.
how it's going.
Yep.
And so, and I just want to say for the listeners is that, you made the comment that, sometimes people don't understand the amount of work that goes into these. And for the most part, I think in this industry where you have this independent game industry, which is just a beautiful thing. And you touched on it earlier, how it's really reemerged, right? Because it was pretty much dead when
Right.
video games took off in the 90s and gaming consoles got so much better with their graphics. Board games, for the most part, it was a death nail.
Right.
And Kickstarter's really allowed this industry to come back and really do very well. Where there's thousands of games, tens of thousands of games done every year now, which
Yep.
that wasn't the case in the past. But it takes a lot of work, and often it is just an individual, one person that's got a passion project, maybe a skill set they've learned in another industry that they can lean on a bit. It's not going to cover off all the things you have to learn in that campaign,
Right.
but it's going to allow you to maybe cover off some of the things you would normally have to farm out to someone else, in this case illustration and things like that. So
Right.
I think it's important to mention that this is a massive achievement to hit what you've hit on your own, coming from 0 games published before that. I think is pretty impressive. So
Thank you.
I do want to give you kudos for that. Yeah.
It was rough. It was very, very rough.
Yeah.
A lot of hats, and eventually I realized, oh my God, I have to be the logistics guy. I have to do the
Oh yeah.
shipping, and I am just now trying to get my marketing hat back on to,
Yeah.
because I have games here, and I have to do some videos and market it so I can sell more of them. And just with life, it's just difficult to get back into life and work and everything going on now. It's
Yeah.
difficult.
It's a
Yeah.
challenge. So what are some of the lessons you would say you learned during that Kickstarter campaign? Some things that if, now looking back, you're obviously wiser, right? You did 2 campaigns. The first one wasn't successful. Second one was successful. And then there's varying measures of success, but I'm going to say successful. What are some things that you've learned that now you'd say, okay, if I do this again, this is something I'm going to change?
Well, you said it before. Is just if you have $5,000 or $10,000, take that away from the goal that you have to make to manufacture the game. Another thing is, don't do a minis game as your first project, because just organizing the minis and getting steel plates and the cost for those, and everything, it was just a nightmare as far as the miniatures went. To make them, I had the prototypes. I'm like, oh, I'll just send them away and done. But there's a lot more to it. So now I would just do cardboard, wood, anything, and let your stretch goals push that forward and have it
Yeah.
prepared. So you have an artist that, hey, can you do up these few sample pieces for me? I have these cardboard guys, but if stretch goals hit, I'm going to do minis, but only do 1 or 2. I just want to show it off if for a stretch goal. So,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
have it in the plan, but yeah, cardboard, wood,
it,
a card game, yeah.
and just to touch on the minis, because I'm actually going through this on another game right now. A couple of things I want to say that. One, for photography. I mean, if you look at Greg's site, you'll see he's got 3D renderings that are turning and they're very detailed and you have a good idea what that mini is going to look like when you receive it, you don't necessarily need to have those minis made ahead of time, right? You can use digital representation, 3D printers. They're everywhere now. So everybody knows a buddy that's got a 3D printer or knows someone they can reach out to. Get one set done so you have them for the photography for your game. But I don't think people necessarily realize a mold cost to do a mini could be anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000, right? Is what you're looking at just for a mold, right? And then you got
thinking about it makes me almost want to pass out.
Makes me want to puke, yeah. And so you got to try to spread that across the sales of your game, right? So, when people see a mini heavy game, I have a new appreciation of that. Like I look at Queen Bee behind me, which is just the heaviest of mini games I think I've ever encountered. I just shudder to think of what the mold costs were for that game, right? It is insane. So that's a good learning. Anything else in terms of like logistics that you do differently?
It's all about timing. So like you said before, my Kickstarter went off and then it waited. I had some stuff going on. 2 years. Shipping actually changed within that time. So shipping to like the UK, it was like $20. Now it's like $60. So just do that Kickstarter and get it out. And I would do shipping after the fact. Like all the big guys do that now. They do shipping after the fact. So because stuff changes, do an estimate on your Kickstarter campaign but do shipping after the fact.
And put the disclaimers in there too, that these are my estimated shipping rates based on the information I have right now.
Right.
And put the disclaimer in there that it may, you're going to do your best to keep the rates based on your estimates, but the disclaimer that, that they could come in higher. I mean, COVID is a great example of this where anybody that was had a game all set, ready to go last January, right? COVID hits, all the rates that they had put in their campaign are out the window, right? Like the rates are substantially higher than what they would have even quoted when their campaign finished. Right. And it is beyond their control. That you can't control something like COVID impacting shipping rates as a reality. So it's important to kind of protect yourself in there too. And, make sure you have as you said, if you can collect that shipping up, after the campaign closes, put the disclaimers in, I think you'll be, better served for those people.
You gave me a shiver there thinking that if I had a campaign I've been working on since January and then COVID hit, oh my God, this was a horror. Yeah.
So what is up next for you? So you have this campaign that's completed. There's lots of learnings. It's behind you. It's been a few years now. Are you taking a kick at another game, or you got another one coming, or what's the next thing you're going to do for Kickstarter?
So in the current game, there like I said, mentioned, there's a creature called Murkmaw, and he's got a big head that devours dwarves that get into the muck around his head. He's got 4 tentacles that whip and they drag dwarves to you, but they're only cardboard. And he was added during the Kickstarter. I had him kicking around, but he was added during the Kickstarter. He's just cardboard because I thought, I'll throw another mini and then just nightmares. I said no, he's just cardboard. So the next is just going to be a tiny little expansion that includes his head. This is me learning again, his head, his tentacles. The quests will be available online for you to print out. There's no printable. There's nothing physical that I'm going to ship to people besides the head. And I actually have one here, this guy, the heads. And
so for people listening, he just held up a mini that's just loaded with teeth coming out of his head, and now he's got these tentacles. He's lifting up as well.
So there's
much like a troll's feet, I guess, that they'll move around the board kind of together, but separately from the main body, I guess, right?
It's very unique. You move the head separately from the tentacles that can go 8 spaces away. He can submerge. He can heal.
That's cool.
He has a lot of cool little things he can do. So yeah, that's and people will be able to print him out. Like I have the 3D printable pieces for him as well. People can do a tier for. So I'm learning. So I had all of these produced in the United States, so there's no shipping from any outside sources.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, and I've got those on. I have those on hand at least for some people. But
so if people want to find out about your game, if they want to order your game, or if they want to contact, how best do they reach out to you?
Just RocketSlug.com. Yep.
So it's RocketSlug Games, right? .com or RocketSlug.com?
RocketSlug, either one. RocketSlug.com or RocketSlugGames.com. Yep.
Awesome. Well, everyone, anyways listening is looking for that. You'll know you find it when you see a slug attached to a rocket screaming its face off as it flies through the air.
Actually, the troll's screaming at you first if you go to the website. But scroll down. Yeah, you'll see him.
Well, Greg, thank you so much for your time. I do appreciate it, and I can't wait to see the next campaign you do. I want to wish you and your family all the best in a very prosperous 2021. You take care.
You as well, man. Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.